So, coming up in Theme 3, Episode 6. Coincidentally, this is Episode 6 and it's Chapter 6. Perfect planning, eh? So, what we're going to do is, in this episode, we're going to look at the difference between individual and group assessments. Basically, individual tests are given to people one at a time, whereas a group assessment is given to more than one person simultaneously. They don't all have to be in the same room, so they're not a group in that sense. What it means is that the test can be given en masse to large numbers of people without the need for an individual consultation or meeting. So your online quiz, your essay and your exam, they're all group assessments. You're not all in the same room taking the quiz, but you are all taking the quiz as a group, if that makes sense. Now, if we were to have an oral presentation and that you had to give live, face-to-face rather than pre-recorded, that would be an individual assessment. Now, I'm sure some of you are very glad that we don't have that form of assessment. Now, those tests are achievement tests to assess the extent to which you have met the planned learning outcomes for our unit of study. Broadly speaking, there are two other types of group tests. Those are ability tests and aptitude tests. Hey, this stuff might be helpful for one of the essays you could take on. You're handing in week 10, so don't panic just yet. Unless you haven't watched this video until week 10, then yeah, get your skates on. Essay's due. So remember, sorry, I don't want to confuse people. The essay is due in week 10. Right. Okay. Now, aptitude tests are designed to predict future performance, i.e. what you have an aptitude for. It's used by institutions to select employees and by universities to select students. So, for example, the UMAT, the Undergraduate Medicine and Health Sciences Admission Test, that's used specifically to assist with the selection of students into medicine, dentistry and health science degree programs. Now, ability tests are designed to test what you're good at right now rather than what you might be good at in the future. In universities, these are used to screen candidates for placements. You need to be good at something now, but not sometime in the future because you're about to go on placement now. Okay? So you need to be ready. So they're used for screening students for placements, but they're also used for selecting students into gifted children programs and so on. Now, achievement tests are best delivered as individual tests when you're wanting to test a level of achievement as part of identifying potential learning problems that a person might have. But apart from that, group tests can be used just as well as individual tests. Do the same sort of thing, but they do them differently. So what are the differences between group and individual tests? Well, group tests tend to use a multiple choice format, whereas individual tests are more likely to have an open-ended format. When scoring a test, an emphasis is on objectivity in the group test because you need to assess everyone equally, and the same individual tests the individual test can be more subjective because it's a one-to-one. There is room for personal judgment to come in through that, one-on-one relationship, building rapport between the examiner and the person being examined. The contexts are different as well. So individual tests are done in a one-to-one environment. Group tests are done in groups, which can be everyone in the same physical space, or as I said, that doesn't have to be the case. It could be everyone in the same temporal space, taking the test at the same time, even though they're not in the same room, or it could be everyone in the same cyberspace, using the same web page, and so on. So in terms of purpose, group testing is more suited to screening, such as selecting pupils, students, or employees, whereas individual tests are better suited to planning remedial action, such as healthcare planning for a client or for a patient. And finally, group testing requires a much larger sample size for the results to be interpreted. The sample needs to be huge rather than just large. Now, the main advantage of group testing is efficiency and costs. They're quicker to do and therefore cheaper. The drawback is that we're all individuals and it can't pick up those times where we have an odd experience doing the test. They fail to pick up when someone's sitting a test and they don't quite follow the instructions properly, or if there's a distraction for the person during the test. It's hard, if not impossible, to pick up those things when you're doing group tests. So, for example, when you're all sitting together in the examination room, it's hard to pick up on how each of you are doing and to monitor whether each of you are following the instructions for the exam, i.e. that you're answering the right number of questions and that you have noticed that the exam paper's printed on both sides, and you notice that there are more questions if you just turn the paper over. We can see things that affect all of you, like if there's a big disruption, if the alarms go off, we can tell that because we're in the room with you, but we can't tell things that are distracting just you as an individual. Now, I'm going to outline 3 different group-based ability tests for you. The full details are in the prescribed text, and I'm just offering here a brief outline of each. First, we have the multi-dimensional aptitude battery test. This was designed to do what the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale did, but to do so more cheaply and more efficiently through being a group-based test. As such, again, efficiency is this driving force behind all of this. To be a group-based test, you're going to be able to deliver the test more quickly and ultimately more cheaply. So this group-based test, it has adopted a multiple choice test format that can be computer scored. And because it's group-based test, it's not well suited to diagnosing activities or for selecting students for placement. This is where individual context is much more important to understand. Next, we have the cognitive abilities test. This test is designed to assess school pupils' abilities, usually for the purpose of checking they have the ability they need for the classroom-based learning that they'll be undertaking. And of course, children of different ages have different abilities, so this test has an overlapping series of tests with each level targeted at a particular age group. The test is seen to have excellent reliability and is really reasonably predictive of student grades. And it's even claimed that it's better at this than relying on teacher ratings of students. So this test is believed to be better than relying on asking the teacher, how well do you think the student's going to do in this unit, for example. Now, I know you're all dying to have a go at one of these tests, so here's a question from the cognitive abilities test. It's taken directly from your prescribed text, so you may have already seen it, but if you haven't, have a go. Word of warning, those remember this is aimed at school children, so if you get this question wrong, you're not going to feel really good about yourself. I know I didn't feel very good about myself when I got it wrong. So got the answer? Well, it's B. The answer is B. Okay, I'm only messing with your heads. The answer's actually A. Sorry, please forgive me. The reason the answer is A, see how easy you get thrown? The reason, I thought it was A actually. That's why. I'm getting all confused now. Right, the reason for the answer is because all of the 3 objects have 4 sides and are shaded in. So You pick the one that has 4 sides and shade it in. That's the one that matches the empty space. Now, anyway, let's move away from the test. Now we're going to look at one more test. This is Raven's progressive matrices. No, it's not Raven at the Bundaberg campus. This is John Raven. Now, originally, this was designed to measure Spearman's G factor. Remember that? It's become a very popular test, probably because it's piggybacked on this G factor, which is also has been a very popular theory. So this has become a very popular test for screening intellect. And again, this is one for children, this time 5 to 11-year-olds. Notice how much testing psychology is doing of children. Is that something we should worry about? Anyway, the test takes the form of a 3x3 table or matrix that has 8 related figures in it, with the 9th figure empty or missing, and the child has to decide which figure from a range of options they're given is the one that should fit into that 9th square. I think I've explained that right. So each matrix gets progressively harder, hence the name of the test. Reliability for this test is not great because it varies by age, and the validity of the test is lower than for verbal IQ tests, but it's still a very popular test. It's particularly valuable for children who have hearing, language or physical impairments because it doesn't require listening or reading instructions or manipulating objects. Now here's an example, again taken from the text, and again only attempt this if you're prepared to be benchmarked against a 5-year-old. I don't know, I can't figure it out, and the answer's not in the book, or else I'm too stupid to figure out where it is in the book. I think the answer might be 8. If you think the answer is 8, then you're either very intelligent or as stupid as I am. Now, if you want to find out more about this test, why not go? Well, do go directly to the source. I always encourage this. Here's a journal article written by the man himself, John Raven. In this paper, he considers the cultural sensitivity of the test. Now, this takes us on to our next topic. Okay, let's now talk about cultural fairness, one of the major problems with psychological tests like intelligence tests. So there's a short section on pages 219 and 220 of our prescribed text that covers this issue. Sorry, hold on. My teletext has gone crazy. I'm having to remember this stuff. Okay. Hold on. Okay, now let's talk about cultural fairness, one of the major problems with psychological tests like intelligence tests. There's a short section on page 219 and 220 of our prescribed text, but for our unit, it's a big issue. It has its own learning outcome pretty much dedicated to it. Now, the Raven test is believed to be culturally fair, but actually no psychological test is culturally fair, as all psychological phenomena occur in specific cultural contexts and at particular times in history. So that context is important, as both knowledge as assessed by intelligence tests and behavioural norms as assessed by personality tests and tests that diagnose what we call mental illnesses are culturally informed, or some would say, and indeed I would say, they're culturally determined.
think of that?
I don't know much about Welsh.
So no test can be culture free, but we might say that some tests are culturally fair in terms of not discriminating on or not discriminating against particular cultural groups. This is also, some might say, more so a concern in relation to aptitude tests, because aptitude tests can directly discriminate against people, i.e. when aptitude tests are used to determine whether someone gets a place at university or gets a job. So let's now have a look at some aptitude test batteries. First, we have the differential aptitude test. This started off as a test for secondary school children to provide them with career guidance, but then it became seen as providing useful career guidance for adults, and it's become one of the most popular multiple aptitude test batteries of all time. It's a test battery because you get battered by it. No, sorry, being silly. It's because there are a battery of tests in it. In this case, 8 in all, that cover verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning, abstract reasoning, perceptual speed and accuracy, mechanical reasoning, and space relations, spelling and language use. It's seen as well grounded in research and has good reliability, except for the mechanical, the one that looks into mechanical, what was that, mechanical awareness? Oh, I just said it. Rewind. Okay. The mechanical one, because that one's seen as biased against women. This has been partly addressed through revision of the test, and there's less gender bias in the test in the latest edition of the test. Does, however, show this test does, however, show problems with internal integrity, as not all of the subscales correlate well together, and in its computerized version, it's been argued that its administration affects the performance of the subject. People tended to do better with the computerized version. It was less tiring, less time pressurized, and more interesting for the subject. It had a kind of novelty value compared to the paper and pencil tests. And you're going to see this issue around computerization of the tests appear a couple of times in this episode. It's a common theme, not surprising now we're in the computer age. Now, on to the general aptitude tests battery. This was developed from tests used by the US Department of Labor for the purpose of predicting job performance. And through some extensive work where the government hired a big group of organizational psychologists to develop the test, it developed into quite a sophisticated test. And the test battery has 9 tests. See the textbook for detail on these. And the test has an online version, like the previous one. The computer version comes up with different results to the paper and pencil version. Now on this next slide, we see the list of 9 tests grouped together into 3 factors. Again, this test is structured around this concept of factors. Here, the overarching factors are cognitive, perceptual, and psychomotor. And now on to our final battery. You've taken a battering, have you? Dreadful puns, apologies, dad jokes abound, can't help myself. So this is our final battery. This one, test battery, I'm getting myself confused now. Anyway, this is the final one. This one's developed for the armed forces, and it's used to screen military recruits and for military job assignments. And because it's used with the military, and the military is a very large occupational group, it's perhaps the most widely used aptitude test that we have. It contains 9 subtests. Again, these are listed in the textbook. And it's seen as highly reliable, with the exception of one of the tests, which is the paragraph comprehension test. Again, this test has been computerized, which is a growing trend in the field. All the tests now are computerized, quicker to administer, easier to administer. Now, to finish off this episode, what should you be doing with this material that I presented? Well, let's look at our learning outcomes. And you can use the material from this episode to help you work towards learning outcome 1. So use this video in the prescribed text to start identifying patterns in all of the tests that are being presented to you, and those and the other tests as well that have been presented in the prescribed text. And what purposes are the tests being developed for? Can you see trends in this? What principles are being used to design these tests? What are the common qualities that you can see in these tests? And what are the common applications of these tests? What are the common ways these tests are being constructed and used? Is there anything bucking the trend? And also, think about the cross-cultural issues. Can these tests be used fairly in all cultural contexts? And can the tests be culture-free? I kind of answered that earlier, but just in case you've forgotten, why don't you think about it? Why don't you come up with your own answer to this? Can the tests ever be culture-free? Okay. Now, in these episodes, in all of these episodes, you will see particularly the recent ones, you'll see a summary of the content coming in terms of the different tests that have been developed. And this is because we're starting to bring in learning outcome 2 into our thinking. This one is what your essay is based on. It's your job basically to look for the things that are similar and different in the tests that are described in our prescribed text, and to think about what you consider are the appropriate uses of these tests. So those are the things for you to ponder, and we'll talk about some of this through in our class discussion. So I shall see you soon. Ta-da!